I'm here with Alisa at the 2017 Maker Faire, and her booth is Crochet Code. Okay, what do you mean by that?
So when I was explaining crochet to my son, he's been watching me do it for a while, and it didn't really make sense to him until I put it in terms of programming language. You have some basic elements, and they can repeat in loops and functions, and it's that same sort of programming logic that applies to your pattern and your structure.
And describe, like, you compare some code with the crochet
so
code.
what I did here, this is what a traditional crochet pattern looks like, and some people will do it in a visual representation as well. But I figured for this audience, people are more comfortable in general with programming language, so we made up sort of fake code that sort of reflects the elements that are in a traditional pattern, so that people would understand, this actually means this, which is the same as this, and it results in that.
Okay, so anyway, going back to crochet, this is your classic make, do,
Yep.
etc. But in these days of, where everything is made, and especially, the cheap clothing that's typically only used once.
Right.
And then crochet, how does it still maintain its existence? I mean, you still have people that follow.
Well, it's amazing because I've actually found that while there's a resurgence of knitting in a younger community, crochet is sort of almost a forgotten art. I go into yarn stores and a lot of them say, well, what are you knitting? And I say, well, I don't actually knit, I crochet. And they say, oh my God, you're so young. And I'm like, yeah, I'm the young one. This is fantastic. But really, it's like there's 70s, 80s, and above, people know how to do this. But then there's this gap where it just is sort of a forgotten art, and there's not really a whole lot of people doing it in that younger group. And I've had a lot of people come here and say, I remember my grandmother did it, or my great-grandmother, or my great-aunt, or whoever, and realizing that no one in the family knows how to do any of the things, they've got maybe, like I do, my grandmother's tablecloths and things like that, but no one in the family in younger generations has that skill anymore, and, just trying to keep it going. And
Now, there was a time to go way back when it was almost necessary, because you just don't go down to Ross or Marshall's and buy your own stuff, or you couldn't even afford it. So,
well, and like this, for example, this is I have a lot of tablecloths and table runners and things like that my grandmother did back in the Depression. And, I mean, first of all, I guess they had a lot of time on their hands, but, like just the detail work, but you couldn't go buy those sorts of things, nor could you really afford to buy them, even if there was a place to do it. And the detail and the attention to I have neither the eyesight or the patience to do something
if you
like
could,
that.
so in terms of detail, actually kind of give us some insight on crochet,
Sure.
where
So,
how it all works.
So with crochet, there are basically three stitches. You've got a single crochet, a half double crochet, which I think is a very strange name, and a double crochet. And they're basically varying heights. Okay, so you can make either a very tight stitch like a single crochet, or like this is a double crochet. It's taller, it's looser,
and it's more,
little more stretchy because it's not as tightly wound, right? So essentially, you combine those three elements into all sorts of complex patterns. This is based on just very simple stitches, but very mathematically oriented. A lot of counting, a lot of detail, a lot of attention. Now, I don't necessarily have that much time to really focus on it. I tend to do things that are just the same stitch repeated. Not a lot of math and counting, because I'm usually doing it in places like this where it's noisy, there are distractions. I'll do it at my son's practice where, people are counting in the background and I can't keep my count and their count all straight, at the same time. But, it gives me a lot of different results. And, even something like Totoro, who looks very complicated, this is one single stitch type.
What do you mean, one?
It's one stitch type.
So it's like it's just one piece of thread.
So one piece of thread, and it's one type of stitch. It's a single crochet stitch, and so it's it's a million single crochets, but done in a loop and a loop and a loop and a loop and a loop, and all the way down.
Well, we have a nice symmetrical shape.
Yes.
How was that done? Just
So,
a lot of trial and error?
That does require counting. There's a pattern that I had that I found online, and but when I looked through it, while it looked complicated, there's a lot of, as you can see, a lot of lines, but it's one stitch and counting.
So I'm looking at this. This is what we're viewing here this is typical crochet.
That is typical crochet.
So I end up thinking there's people who do crochet with no mathematics training or
Right.
background,
Right.
but they exercise their mind
Right.
for that.
They're using it mathematically, but without thinking that they're using it mathematically. I mean, I'm sure my grandmother never thought about the mathematics behind what she was creating in tablecloths. They were just, patterns and, things that she practiced. But in essence, I mean, they're beautiful mathematical shapes.
Okay, so I guess in some ways, doing this would be at times like nice therapy to get away from the
It
computers
is good
and
because my day
traffic
job,
jam.
I'm on the computer all day, and at night it's just nice to do something, hands-on and tactile that I can, you know, it gets me off the internet, and I'm actually doing something that I have to show for it at the end. And it's comforting.
Now, you mentioned knitting and crochet, the difference.
Yes. So knitting. Um, I borrowed these from a friend. So knitting uses 2 needles, and the stitches always stay on the needles. With crochet, you have one active stitch that your hook goes through, and
Okay.
then you wrap your yarn accordingly, depending on what kind of stitch you want to do, and it works into one stitch at a time. So it's a slightly different, it's still knots and yarn, but it's a different methodology for how to go about it.
But I imagine when you get into all this, you also find a lot of details
Yes.
on materials, threads, the type of knots, the type of knitting, the type of loops,
Yep.
things that work, things that don't work, or why you would have certain stitches and these
And,
others.
there's a lot of different kinds of yarn, and they can be
Okay.
made with, natural or synthetic
Oh, I see. This
materials.
has, oh, you actually have all the
Right.
types of, like 50%.
Right. So you can go
wool.
from like thin, really thin, strings that are very delicate and can be more lacy to a very bulky, cozy kind of yarn that works up well for like a cozy sweater or a scarf or a blanket. So you can make it as complex or as detailed as you want, as fine or as bulky as you want, and you learn over time what works for you and what you enjoy working with, what feels good.
Okay, so anyways, when you mentioned about like one piece of yarn here, I'll just kind of share a little story. Back in the days of the space program in the 50s and 60s, when they have like the pressure suits, they're, what the United States, the edge that they had on spacesuit technology was, the suits under vacuum pressure tend to be very stiff, and so you had to move it. One like with the Soviet suits would spring back. They found there's like an inner mesh that's a single stitch, just like your item here, that this was all woven around, and at the time it was secret. Um, and of course, these days, yeah, the word gets out. This what you do is a single stitch of a whole lacing on the inside. Of course, there's other layers
Right.
in the spacesuit, so I just thought I'd share that with you.
It's interesting.
So, getting back, so how's the Maker Faire been for you?
It's been great. I wish I had more time to go out and explore. I spend, of course, most of my time here in the booth, but it's been great. Lots of interesting people to talk to, and lots to do.
Okay, so here with Alisa at the Crochet Code, showing the similarities of computer code to crochet instructions or code as it is. Okay, and thank you.